So over the weekend, I got together with a friend of mine who hosts another show like this one. I don't want to say who it is because, they may not want their view to be particularly public. But one of the things we talked about is how lately we are hearing these defenses of authoritarians from the people on the right that we would expect to hear them from. But the contingent of the left, which we used to call the authoritarian left, and I guess we still do, but it used to be way smaller. The portion of the left that is sort of playing coy with and often defending authoritarian strongman types is growing to the point that it is a really major concern, I think, for those who are really on the sort of libertarian progressive left, and that's small L libertarian, as in not authoritarian. I'm not talking Rand Paul libertarianism. I'm talking on the authoritarian libertarian scale, you're on the libertarian progressive left. And there's now increasingly sort of a rift within the left. And one of the things I spoke about with my friend and fellow host was that sometimes it occurs to us that it would be really great to do some kind of an expose about why are we seeing this linkage, this cozy relationship between the right authoritarian sort of populist rhetoric people and some on the left who seem to support the exact same authoritarians. And this sometimes is Assad, sometimes it's Nicolas Maduro, sometimes it's Putin, sometimes it's playing coy with China, and there are certainly other examples. And fundamentally what I think this is about, and if you want examples of this, just look at a Tucker Carlson program 1 or 2 nights a week and see who Tucker is having on from the supposed left where they find common ground. And we're supposed to believe they are crossing partisan lines in order to find areas of agreement that just make sense, when the reality is that the authoritarian left has always had plenty in common with the right. It's not that they're escaping partisanship to come together where it makes obvious sense on uncontroversial issues. It's actually that the authoritarian aspect of some on the left really is not very left. It's really quite right wing. That's the reality of what's going on. And along these lines, Fox News ran a bizarre, glowing profile of Vladimir Putin in ahead of Joe Biden's meeting with Putin. And fundamentally what this is about for both the right and the left is that for different reasons, they want to delegitimize the idea that somebody on the left, meaning a Democrat, is going to hold such an authoritarian accountable, because for those on the right, it's about, we just never want to allow any Democrat to appear strong. Going back to John Kerry and even before, it's about the feminization of Democrats. It's about these are not strong people, these are sissies, et cetera. That's why Fox News would want to sort of portray Putin as masculine and a glowing profile advance of meeting with Biden so that they don't they could want to make Biden look bad. And for the left, it's this stuff of anytime the United States even stands up to anyone, that's neoliberalism, that's hegemonic, that's colonialism, etc. And so, hey, the right and these aspects of the left end up wanting to similarly raise up people like Vladimir Putin. I will never get it, but let's take a look at some of this glowing profile. It's almost North Korea-esque in some way of Vladimir Putin on Fox News.
And the overwhelming support, you'd have to look to the man who came before him, and the drunken antics seem the exact opposite of Vladimir Putin.
Check this out.
Steve Harrigan lived in Russia for 10 years, and he's got more on this now. Boris Yeltsin, Vladimir Putin, studying contrasts.
Right.
A sharp contrast, John, especially at the very start when Putin came in 1999. His approval ratings for an unknown were overwhelmingly high, and part of the reason was just the physical contrast he made with Boris Yeltsin. By 1999, most Russians were ready for a change. The hero who stood on the tank in 1991 and broke communist control over freedom of speech, elections, and private property was also blamed by those who saw their life savings disappear as a new class of billionaires scooped up state factories. Yeltsin's lengthy disappearances from public view were blamed on heart attacks or excessive drinking.
To many Russians, President Boris Yeltsin felt like an embarrassment. He was very famous for...
So this is all the buildup to get to the great Putin, right? This is all about the bad stuff about Yeltsin first.
Being inebriated. He was a known alcoholic and a big drinker. He was very large, just in stature. So the way that he behaved in these high-level public diplomacy meetings with the U.S. presidents or other heads of state embarrassed a lot of Russians at the time.
The physical contrast with Putin was stark.
And if you're not watching, they're running video of Putin lifting weights, and then it gets even more sycophantic.
Fit. He's a martial arts champion.
Doing karate.
He says he never drinks. And for many Russians, that also gave them a sense of stability. Mr. Putin embodied that physically in a way that President Yeltsin absolutely did not.
Putin also embodied a return to an authoritarian past, shutting down press freedom, banishing independent oligarchs, and consolidating power in his own hands. Putin could be around for a long time to come. He's changed the Constitution. He could potentially be in office until the year 2036. John?
He knows how to consolidate power, no question about that. Steve Harrigan for us. Steve, thank you so much. And can you imagine, Sandra, Boris Yeltsin on horseback without a shirt on? Not a pretty picture.
Yeah, so there it is. And so fundamentally, what I think is going on here, there are more and more people that are actually calling out, not just the right, but also those on the left who are playing coy with these guys. I think there's a couple important things to sort of keep in mind here. Number one is that there is no circumstance in which progressive values align with the way that Vladimir Putin runs government, Bashar al-Assad, Nicolas Maduro. Sometimes there will be people on the left even defending Hamas. It's often the exact same people. There's nothing progressive about that, and it's really important to bear that in mind. But one of the really toxic things that's going on with the left on this issue is when someone like me, for example, calls this out, I will be called everything from a Zionist, even though this doesn't directly relate. Putin doesn't directly relate to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, although some of those people are also playing pretty coy with Hamas, to a neoliberal colonialist, to a faux progressive, to a right-winger, et cetera, et cetera. But what I would challenge those folks to look at is if you look at the history of social democracy around the world and in Northern Europe, et cetera, when has progressive social democracy ever looked like people like Vladimir Putin and Assad and Xi and Maduro, et cetera? And so the case I would make is that this sort of authoritarian left that plays coy with this stuff that Fox News does on Putin and others, they are the ones that have been either led astray or for whatever personal reasons have decided that that's the direction they want to go in. The progressive social democracy movement looks quite similar today to what it did decades and decades ago. And unfortunately, with a lot of these examples, if you follow the money, you start to learn a lot about why some of these factions are staking out the positions that they're staking out. And maybe we'll say more about that in the future. I'm really excited that one of our sponsors today is Helix Sleep. I sleep on a Helix mattress at home. I absolutely love it. And that's why I reached out to them about sponsoring the David Pakman Show. Buying a mattress in the past was always a huge guessing game for me. I didn't know what I actually needed. I didn't know what I would like. But Helix has a sleep quiz on their website. You tell them your body type, your sleeping position, your back pain issues you might have, and their tool matched me with a mattress that is perfect for me. It's cool enough at night. It's the right firmness. I generally just do way better sleeping these days because of the mattress. Helix was awarded #1 best overall mattress for the last 2 years by both GQ and Wired Magazine. It is well-deserved, I can tell you firsthand. Every Helix mattress comes with a 10-year warranty. You can try the mattress risk-free for 100 nights, and they will even come pick it up at your house if you don't love it, but I know you will. All of my viewers will get up to $200 off your order, and you'll get 2 super premium pillows for free when you go to the link right underneath this video.